the Chief Justice's advisory to the President. Mr. Speaker, from the outset, it is true that Article 262 is clear, and it is true, and we've considered this before, that it was possible that the Chief Justice could advise the President to dissolve Parliament. Now, it is no longer a possibility, it is a fact that has happened. But the goodness with that, Mr. Speaker, is that the Chief Justice is now functus officio on that issue. And having been functus officio, we can now express ourselves in terms of our view on how the President should handle that issue of the advice. And, Mr. Speaker, the intention that I believe that although the CJ has advised the President to dissolve Parliament, that particular advice should not be adopted. It should not be adopted for a number of reasons, Mr. Speaker. First of all, there is no timeline. And therefore, we can use that time to prudently examine what is to happen. The reason it should not be adopted is this. If you look carefully at our Constitution, all the elections are lumped together on the same day. The President is to be elected on the same day when the governors are being elected, when members of Parliament are being elected, when MCs are being elected. And all of them use the same day of the general election, and the date is given. Any consequence, in my view, of dissolving Parliament must of necessity dissolve all those other bodies, including the presidency as elected. And that then would mean that we would not just be talking of a crisis of Parliament, we'll be talking of a crisis of all other institutions. And then we come to the second bigger difficulty. If that is to be so, for the President who is serving his second term, for the governors who are serving their second term, and who by the Constitution would be barred from further running, for this particular one, will they be eligible or not? That is a constitutional question that must be determined beyond just advising the President to dissolve Parliament. We are in even further problems as we speak today. The IEBC is not properly constituted. The Justice and Legal Affairs Committee only considered the draft bill, which is yet to be presented, on how to appoint further commissioners of the IEBC. Which IEBC will be able to conduct those elections in their immenseness to the satisfaction of the Constitution? So, Mr. Speaker, I find that we are in a situation where what was intended to be solved ends up being a much smaller constitutional issue than what then will be created, because we would have to determine whether they are eligible. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I support the Parliamentary Service Commission. I support the move to go to court for further interpretations. We must have that further interpretation clearly before we rush on the issue of dissolution. Mr. Speaker, I have urged 3 weeks ago the leadership of this House that there's also something else we can do in the meantime, even in that meantime. The problem here with Article 262 is the timeline, that we were unable to pass the legislation within 6 years. I suggested, and I still want to suggest to the leadership, that we can consider amending Article 262 and simply move from the 6 years to 10 years. The whole issue will have gone away. And we do not even need a referendum for that, or 15, or whatever the case. Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest, as I close, Mr. Speaker, as I close, that is the discretion of members. Mr. Speaker, I want to suggest that these are the kind of issues that are ideal to be considered in a referendum when you are amending the Constitution. And especially when we understand from the Honorable, His Excellency, the President and the Prime Minister, that the BBI report is about to be released. That would be a good occasion to consider the depth of these matters. If you were to take that advice now, Mr. Speaker, we'll plunge into a deeper constitutional crisis. Therefore, my view, Mr. Speaker, is that advice, well-meaning as it might be, is advice that should not be taken because we'll be in a crisis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.